You want to know what happens when a woman takes you for granted? Most men make the same mistake. They try harder, they give more, they become more available, more patient, more understanding, hoping that somehow their extra effort will finally make her recognize what she has. But there comes a moment when you have to understand something. You cannot make someone value what they have become accustomed to receiving for free. And the answer is not to punish her. It is not to make her jealous. It is not to disappear just so she feels your absence. The answer is something much deeper. You change the way you participate. Because when a woman becomes comfortable with your constant attention, your endless patience, and your willingness to always be there, she may stop seeing those things as gifts and start seeing them as guarantees. And that is where you make your greatest mistake. You keep giving. In this video, we're going to explore 7 things you should do when she takes you for granted, how to reclaim your peace without playing games, and how Stoic principles can help you stop chasing recognition and start living from self-respect. If you want more videos about Stoicism, psychology, relationships, and becoming a stronger man, subscribe to the Stoic Psychologist. Because the first thing you need to do is something most men are terrified of. You need to stop giving her what she has stopped appreciating. 1. Stop giving more to receive less. The first thing you need to do when she takes you for granted is stop giving more to receive less, because this is where most men get trapped. She becomes distant, so you become more attentive. She gives you less affection, so you give her more. She stops appreciating your effort, so you start trying harder to prove how much you care. You think if she could just see how much you are willing to do for her, something inside her would change. But it rarely works that way. Because when someone knows you will continue giving regardless of how little they give back, your effort becomes predictable. She does not have to wonder whether you will still be there. She already knows. You will answer, you will forgive, you will check on her, you will make the first move, you will repair the distance, and slowly, something that was once special becomes ordinary. Your attention becomes expected, your patience becomes assumed, your presence becomes guaranteed. And that is when you need to step back. Not dramatically, not with anger, not with a long message announcing that you are done. You simply stop exceeding the level of effort you are receiving. If she reaches out, respond naturally. If she makes an effort, meet it. If she pulls away, do not chase the distance. Let the space exist. Because sometimes the only way to discover whether someone values your presence is to stop constantly reminding them that you are there. The Stoics understood that your energy is not unlimited, your time is not unlimited, your attention is not unlimited, and giving these things away simply because you are afraid of losing someone is not love. It is attachment. So stop trying to earn appreciation through sacrifice. Let your actions become measured, let your effort have boundaries, and let her behavior reveal what your constant giving has been hiding. Because when you stop carrying the entire connection by yourself, something begins to happen. For the first time, she has to participate. And if she doesn't, you finally have an answer you could never get while you were doing everything for her. But that answer leads to something even deeper. Because once you stop overgiving, you have to learn how to stop being constantly available. 2. Stop being available whenever she wants you. And once you stop giving more than you receive, the next thing you need to change is your availability. Because when she takes you for granted, she often becomes accustomed to knowing that you are always there. The goal is to become so grounded in your own worth that her inability to appreciate you no longer destroys your peace. And when that happens, another transformation begins. You stop tolerating the very behavior that taught her she could take you for granted. And that is where the 4th step begins. 4. Stop accepting the bare minimum. The 4th thing you need to do is stop accepting the bare minimum just because you are afraid of losing her. Because this is where being taken for granted becomes a cycle. She gives you a little attention, and you treat it like everything is okay. She disappears, then comes back with a simple message, and you immediately forget how she made you feel. She puts in almost no effort, but because you care about her, you convince yourself that something is better than nothing. And slowly, your standards begin shrinking. You ask for less, You expect less. You tolerate more. Not because you suddenly became okay with being treated poorly, but because you became afraid that demanding better might make her leave. That fear can make a man betray himself. He accepts conversations that leave him drained. He accepts inconsistency. He accepts disrespect disguised as jokes. He accepts being treated like an option while continuing to treat her like a priority. And eventually, he calls it patience. But patience without boundaries can become self-neglect. The Stoics did not teach men to tolerate everything. They taught men to distinguish between what they can control and what they must accept as reality. You cannot force someone to become more loving. You cannot force someone to become more consistent. You cannot force someone to appreciate you, but you can decide whether you remain available to behavior that repeatedly violates your standards. That is where your power is. You do not need to threaten her. You do not need to give an ultimatum every time something goes wrong. You simply become honest with yourself. If this continues, am I willing to live with it? That question cuts through attachment. Because sometimes you are not afraid of losing her. You are afraid of admitting that what you wanted from her may never come. And accepting that truth hurts. But it also sets you free. Because once you stop accepting the bare minimum, you stop teaching people that the bare minimum is enough to keep you. You become calmer, more selective, more intentional about who receives your time. And that change creates a new kind of distance. Not the distance of anger, the distance of a man who has finally stopped negotiating against himself. But there is still one thing you must learn. Because even after you raise your standards, you cannot spend your life trying to make her realize what she has lost. You have to let her experience the consequences of no longer having unlimited access to you. And that brings us to the fifth step. 5. Let her experience your absence. Naturally. The fifth thing you need to do is let her experience your absence naturally. Not as punishment, not as a strategy, not because you want to watch her panic and come running back, but because when someone has become accustomed to your constant presence, they may never realize what you contributed until you stop carrying what was never yours to carry alone. You were always there, always checking in, always starting the conversation, always fixing the tension, always making yourself available whenever she wanted you. So from her perspective, your presence became normal, expected, almost invisible. But when you step back and stop doing everything for the connection, something becomes visible. The space you used to fill. She may notice that the messages are no longer coming. She may notice that you are no longer asking where she has been. She may notice that you are not reacting every time she becomes distant. And she may begin wondering what changed. But this is where you need to be careful. Do not turn her curiosity into your new addiction. Do not sit beside your phone waiting for her to notice. Do not post things designed to make her jealous. Do not suddenly become cold just so she asks what happened. That would mean you are still chasing her reaction. You are simply chasing from a different direction. Real detachment is quieter. You step back and continue living. If she reaches out, you respond naturally. If she makes an effort, you observe it. If she begins treating you differently, you allow her actions to speak. But if she does nothing, you accept that information too. Because her response is not the goal. Clarity is. You are giving reality room to reveal itself. And sometimes that is the most powerful thing you can do. You stop forcing the relationship to move in the direction you want. You stop carrying both sides. You stop trying to create feelings that another person is not willing to create with you. And then something happens inside you. You realize you can survive her distance. You realize you can live without her constant attention. You realize that the emptiness you feared was not permanent. And once you discover that, you become much harder to control with the fear of losing someone. That is where the sixth transformation begins. Because when you stop fearing her absence, you finally become capable of choosing your own peace over her approval. 6. Choose your peace over her approval. The sixth thing you need to do is choose your peace over her approval. Because even after you stop overgiving, raise your standards, and step back, there is still one chain that can keep you attached. the need for her to understand. You want her to realize why you changed. You want her to acknowledge how she treated you. You want her to admit that she took you for granted. You want that conversation where she finally says, "I understand now." But what if you never get it? What if she never apologizes? What if she never recognizes what she did? What if she tells a completely different version of the story? This is where your Stoic discipline is tested. Because peace cannot depend on receiving the apology you wanted. You cannot control whether she understands your perspective. You cannot control whether she regrets her behavior. You cannot control whether she ever admits that she was wrong. But you can decide that you no longer need those things to move forward. Epictetus taught that we suffer when we demand that reality conform to our desires. You wanted her to appreciate you. She didn't. You wanted her to understand you. Maybe she won't. You wanted her to treat you differently. Maybe she never will. Acceptance does not mean approval. It means seeing reality clearly enough to stop fighting against what you cannot change. And once you accept that, your peace becomes yours again. You no longer need to explain every decision. You no longer need to defend your character. You no longer need to prove that you were the one who cared. You simply live. You work. You grow. You build. You become more disciplined. And slowly, the question changes. You stop asking, "Does she finally see my value?" You start asking, "Do I still see it?" That is the question that matters, because a woman can overlook you. She can misunderstand you. She can even walk away from you. But none of those things have the authority to determine who you become. Your peace belongs to you. Protect it. And once you truly understand that, there is only one final step. You have to decide what kind of access people receive after they have shown you that they do not value it. And that is where the seventh and final transformation begins. 7. Decide who deserves access to you. The seventh thing you need to do is decide who deserves access to you, because once you stop overgiving, stop chasing, raise your standards, and reclaim your peace, you eventually arrive at a question that changes everything. What happens now? Do you simply wait for her to appreciate you again? Do you return to the same behavior the moment she gives you attention? Or do you finally understand that access to your life should be earned through consistent respect, effort, and reciprocity? This is where many men fail. They become strong for a few days, they pull back, they focus on themselves. Then she sends one affectionate message, gives them a little attention, and suddenly everything goes back to the way it was. The boundaries disappear, the standards disappear, the self-respect disappears, and the cycle begins again. But if someone has repeatedly shown you that they do not value your presence, you cannot allow one moment of attention to erase an entire pattern. Watch consistency, watch effort, watch character. If she genuinely changes, you will not need to force it. You will see it. Her communication becomes different. Her effort becomes different. The way she treats your time becomes different. The relationship begins to feel mutual instead of one-sided. And if that happens, you can choose to rebuild slowly. But if nothing changes, you have another choice. You can walk away. Not with hatred, not with revenge, not because you want her to suffer. You simply recognize that your life is too valuable to repeatedly place in the hands of someone who treats your presence like an option. That is not arrogance, that is discernment. The Stoic does not try to control who stays. He controls what he allows into his life. He understands that every relationship has an exchange of energy, attention, trust, and time. And those things are precious. You cannot get your time back. You cannot recover every hour spent begging to be appreciated. You cannot reclaim every moment you spent trying to convince someone to see what they refuse to see. So from this point forward, choose differently. Give to people who give. Respect people who respect you. Communicate with people who actually listen. And love people who understand that love is something both people protect. Because when you finally learn that, you stop asking how to make someone value you. You simply stop giving unlimited access to those who don't. And that is the moment you realize you were never asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person to give it. There comes a moment When you stop asking why she takes you for granted and start asking a much more important question: why am I still accepting it? Because your value was never determined by how well someone treated you. Your value existed before she entered your life, and it remains after she leaves. You do not need to punish her. You do not need to make her jealous. You do not need to disappear just to make her realize what she lost. You simply need to stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Stop overgiving. Stop chasing. Stop proving. Stop accepting the bare minimum. Stop trying to control her reaction, and start protecting your peace. That is not becoming cold. That is becoming clear. The Stoics understood that you cannot control another person's choices, but you can control what you do with your own life. So if she values you, let her actions show it. If she doesn't, let reality teach you what words never could. Because sometimes the greatest lesson is not learning how to make someone appreciate you. It is learning when to stop asking for appreciation from someone who has already shown you they will not give it. You don't become unforgettable by making someone regret losing you. You become unforgettable by becoming a man who no longer abandons himself just to be chosen. And when you finally choose yourself, something changes forever. You stop chasing, you stop begging, you stop proving, you simply move in peace, and that is the real power of a man who knows his worth.